Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Kim Hoffman, and today I join a panel of 6 contributors who all work together to release this new openly published book. Open Pedagogy Approaches was released on July 1st, and believe me when I say that it demonstrates an inspiring account of the good that can happen when we each contribute unique and discrete efforts. The beauty of this particular presentation is that you will hear from 6 professionals who each in their own way considers themselves to be a newcomer to work on open publishing and/or open pedagogy. We want to stress how open projects like this one can serve as a gateway to many more fruitful advances in the open movement when we are deliberate in offering entry-level opportunities for people to get involved. Before we introduce our presenters, here's a little bit about the book. So it is a licensed CC BY attribution, and it's an OER collection of case studies that focus on OER and open pedagogy projects. Within the book, there are 22 case studies that highlight different ways that instructors, libraries, and students are working and learning together. We have been really fortunate to work with so many partners, some of those you can see listed here, but not to mention my co-editor, Alexis Clifton, who couldn't be presenting with us today, and our graphic artist who developed this beautiful book cover, Allison Brown. Both of these ladies are from SUNY Geneseo. So without further ado, let's introduce our esteemed panel of speakers. We will each take a brief turn introducing ourselves, including some rationale as to why we consider ourselves to be a first-timer in the field of open publishing or open pedagogy. So I'll start as the first picture here. I'm Kim Hoffman. I'm Director of Learning Initiatives at the University of Rochester. And I've been working in libraries for 23 years, mainly at 2 different institutions, SUNY Geneseo, which you heard referenced, and the University of Rochester. A few years back, I worked on a similar compilation of case studies. In that case, it was instructional design with libraries, but we worked with a traditional publisher. So with the topic focused on open pedagogy and the open movement, I knew that this book had to be different. It had to be published in the open. And for that, I was not ready to take on such a new task without a great support system. Mariana?
Hello, everybody. My name is Moriana Garcia, and I am the STEM and Scholarly Communications Librarian at the University of Rochester, and have been working to advance open scholarship initiatives on campus since 2015. I was part of the editorial board for Open Pedagogy Approaches, and although I had supported the publication of 2 open access books before, this was the first time I was able to participate in the entire project from the beginning, from proposal to publication. It was also the first time participating in a process that was completely open and collaborative to the level that this one was, with so many communities and groups involved, which made for a very unique and enriching experience. Luann?
Hi, I'm Luann Trevier, and I'm a Digital Initiatives and Scholarly Communication Librarian at Macalester College, a small liberal arts campus. Like other librarians, I wear many hats, and about a year and a half ago, I jumped into supporting 2 faculty-authored OER creation projects. These were already underway. So this Open Pedagogy book project was a great opportunity for me to find out more about the Rebus community firsthand as a participant. And I'm a first-timer in the sense of answering the call for collaborators on an open edited project for the first time and serving as a copy editor. Carrie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Baldwin-Sorrell. I'm the Social Sciences and Scholarly Communications Librarian at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania. It's a mid-sized research university. I had done some open access programming right away when I started this position about 4 years ago. And after a series of those, this later prompted a collaboration with a tenured faculty member. She reached out to me about including open access or affordable textbooks in one of her classes. And that eventually evolved into collaborating on an open pedagogy focused class that had the students write and create open textbook chapters. And then we wrote up this project for the book. I am a first timer in that it is my first scholarly publication. And also I'm a fairly newcomer to open pedagogy as well.
Hey everyone, I'm Heather Maselli. I'm an adjunct faculty member at Roger Williams University in Rhode Island, where I teach general education science classes. I'm not really a novice to open education. I've been using OER for almost a decade now, but more recently got into open pedagogy in my classes at Roger Williams as an OER faculty fellow, where my science students create websites that cover topics where science and society intersect. I'm also a Hewlett Foundation OER research fellow for 2019-2020, and I'm working with a couple of colleagues on student agency and open pedagogy projects, but I'm considered a first timer because despite being in academia for 12 years, this is my first peer-reviewed published article. Sarah?
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Siddiqui. I'm a STEM librarian at the University of Rochester's River Campus Libraries. My liaison areas are math and statistics, mechanical engineering, earth and environmental sciences, and the lab for laser energetics. I've been in this role for a little over 2 years now. I joined in August 2016 after graduating from the University of Albany's Information Science program. I'd say I was introduced to open education and the open scholarship umbrella pretty much as soon as I joined RCL. There have been a lot of workshops and conversations in the libraries and across campus about open education and participating in the open pedagogy book as a peer reviewer and author, both of which were my first time. It seems like the perfect opportunity to simultaneously contribute to the project and build on my knowledge.
So much of the book, Open Pedagogy Approaches, practices what it preaches. As I ask specific questions of our panelists, you'll see this meta approach diagram return again and again. As we proceed, you will see that each segment of the cycle, as we rotate through, relates to each speaker that will follow this slide. First, as mentioned, the book in itself is an OER, focused on OER and open pedagogy. We'll start with the two authors who contributed chapters detailing their open pedagogy project. We're going to start with Carrie, who speaks from a librarian perspective, and then Heather, who speaks from a faculty perspective. So Carrie, sorry, what motivated you to propose a chapter?
So I was motivated to propose a chapter because I worked on this project, as I mentioned, with a tenured faculty member, and our collaboration was really exciting to me and something that I thought was worth sharing and worth encouraging others to do. But I was very new to writing. I had never written a scholarly article before. I was also quite new to conferences. I had not been to many. I had not presented at any. So to me, this book seemed like a really good venue to jump into. It really played to both of our individual strengths. My co-author has published extensively, but almost exclusively in biology. And the book, because it really spoke to our collaborations, allowed me to talk about the open access and pedagogical aspects that were important to my contributions. The fact that it was in open access publication also made the project much more approachable to me. I didn't need to work with a for-profit publisher. The work that I was doing didn't go into a black box of a journal submission system. The review of our proposals was also extremely transparent, and there weren't any difficult author agreements to negotiate. So it was also really important to me that we stayed true to the open access roots of the class, important for ethical reasons, and also allowed me to focus on sharing the project itself, which was my overall goal in getting engaged.
And Heather, how about you? What motivated you to propose a chapter?
Yeah, so I was invited to propose a chapter with my co-author, who is Lindsay Gum. She's our scholarly communications librarian here at Roger Williams. And honestly, like, I'm going to echo a lot of the things that Carrie talked about. The whole openness of the project was really refreshing, considering that despite the fact that I've been in academia for 12 years, I have kind of an untraditional path through academia, although it's not as untraditional as it may have been before. I've been an adjunct for 10 years, and there's just not a lot of room for adjuncts to publish without support. And so my collaboration with her really actually helped me start to find ways that I can publish. And she told me about the book, and it was so transparent from the beginning. We knew exactly what the editors were looking for because of their rubric. We were kept informed about every step of the process, when everything was due, when reviews would be out, and even if there was like a delay or something, we were kept on top of it as well, which was really wonderful, which is so different from sending a manuscript into like this void that sometimes journals can be. So it was really, really great in that aspect. The two steps of the review process, the peer review and the editorial review, were also super helpful in framing our content to fit the whole project, so that we fit within our chapter, with our chapter fit within the greater picture of this whole project. And so all in all, it was a wonderful first, publishing experience for me as an author.
Thanks, Heather. And I'll just say that the timeline and keeping you all informed was like kind of a miracle that we actually ended this project when we said we were going to, given COVID and everyone going home. So thanks for that. All right, so our next speaker is Sarah, who was both an author and a peer reviewer. She's very ambitious. So Sarah, why take the latter role and why do both?
Thanks, Kim. So first, starting out, my chapter, it was about a collaborative project with the faculty where we transformed a writing assignment into a multimodal project. And this was my first publication, and I was extremely glad to have the opportunity to be a co-author with her and share our experience together. This appealed to me particularly because the book and the chapter are open, much like what everyone echoed before. And so it was much easier to share, and being peer reviewed, it's something credible that hopefully people can benefit from. And because the book was hosted on an online platform, it also allowed us to be a little innovative with our content. One of the things we included in the chapter was a video where we interviewed a student for their perspective of the transformed assignment, and embedding and watching something like that is much smoother in an ebook. When it comes to peer reviewing a chapter, this was also my first time, and I actually had several motivations for taking on the review, aside from the great experience. And the very first thing that drew me was the title of the chapter, actually. It is called Mathematics Courses and the Ohio Open Ed Collaborative. And being a math librarian, it is very pertinent to my work, and I was excited to be able to peruse its contents before everyone else. The second thing that was the fact that it was an open peer review, and the overall process was very transparent. The reviewers gave comments on the chapter's Google Doc, and then we were asked to fill out a form, which was essentially a rubric that asked for ratings and comments explaining our rationale for each category. It was really helpful for the whole review process, and I think I'll probably end up adapting a version of that rubric in any future reviews. Another great advantage of doubling up, which I realized later, is that while reviewing somebody else's chapter or article, we have a different perspective as compared to when writing something in our own voices. So naturally, as my chapter was also being reviewed at the same time, I really appreciated being able to tie back the comments my fellow reviewers and I gave with the feedback that my co-author and I received. So I like to think that we benefited from the two roles while making the final edits to the chapter. And lastly, but definitely not the least, It was really good to see some of the different pieces of the book that came together to create it. I think I felt more connected with the different aspects of the book, and it was a really great learning opportunity overall.
Great, thank you, Sarah. And just until now, I didn't realize that those two things were simultaneously happening, being reviewed and reviewing. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so as we move from our authors to editorial contributors, the board responsible for putting this book together are incredibly proud of the open practices that we put into place while espousing the value of going open. From our initial call for proposals, to sending out notifications of acceptance into the book, to adapting and then sharing author, peer reviewer, and co-editor instructions and agreements, we aim to model open practices every step of the way. So with that, Moriana was one of our 9 original editorial board members. So Moriana, as one of those members, what were your biggest learning lessons and what have you taken away so that you can help others?
Well, as I mentioned in my intro, this was my first time participating in the entire publishing workflow of a book and experiencing each step of the process. And as you can see from the image, which is a derivative of the publishing an academic monograph, open access considerations, there are a lot of steps involved. It's truly a daunting task if you are trying to do that alone. There are so many steps to fulfill in order to have a published monograph, and even more if you are trying to use open practices to achieve that goal. It's even more complex. You have all the transparency considerations, etc. I certainly consider that I'm better prepared now to support and guide others in my academic community who might want to publish an open monograph using a similar approach. And you need to experience the process to see how much it takes to actually go through it. In addition, it was very rewarding to participate in the collaborative editorial work. For example, we used, as my colleagues mentioned, an open rubric to evaluate the proposals, which was extremely helpful. The thing is, when you receive so many excellent submissions, it becomes very difficult to make decisions. And sticking to the rubric was our salvation. I benefit enormously for having that guidance. As some of my colleagues as well, I'm very fond of rubrics now. They really help with everything. In sum, working on this project was a great educational experience. My major takeaway is that publishing an open book is a huge effort. If we want more faculty to participate in it, their willingness to engage in the process needs to be incentivized and rewarded accordingly. Of course, librarians need to understand enough of the publication process in order to support them, and also to have access to the tools that make everything possible, like Pressbooks, for example, which was the main platform for publication. So in sum, it was a wonderful experience, and I hope to pass it on anybody that might need my help to publish. To publish a book myself, I'm not so sure. But thinking that I can count with others that can help me if I emulate this process, it makes the idea a lot more attractive. Thank you.
Yeah, and to that, Moriana, I would say too, just being able to share the work. Like, could we each individually have done this book alone? No way. So yeah, small parts. All right, so moving to our third quadrant. Speaking of kind of fears and things that we would say no way, when we started the book, copy editing was my biggest fear anyway. This was part of the traditional publishing process that was definitely valued in that past project that I had talked about. Questions like, would anyone volunteer to copy edit? What would the quality of those edits look like? And how would the authors and the co-editors review that careful work once it's been fully edited? This was new domain for sure. One really exciting development was that a course on copy editing just happened to be running at the University of Rochester in the spring of 2020. So it offered this amazing opportunity to turn a course into an open pedagogy course. The students' work in the end accounted for 4 of our chapter edits. We were equally thrilled to have many more professionals dedicated to the volunteering that was involved in copy editing. And Luann was one such professional who really saved us and whose work really stood out. So Luann, how is your copy editing contribution different from other roles you've taken on that you alluded to at the beginning? And what value did this role bring to you?
Well, most of the support that I've provided to OER authors has been in consulting on technology and platforms. Since I joined 2 OER efforts that were already in the works at my institution, the initial planning had already been done when I had joined. So I wanted firsthand experience in participating in an edited open book to better understand how this can go from the spark of an idea to a full-blown collaboration. And when I saw the call for collaborators for the Open Pedagogy book project, I saw it as a way for me to become an active participant in the greater open education community, kind of a first step, and to learn more about open pedagogy at the same time. One of my goals was to learn more about the Rebus community, how this helps authors find collaborators and co-authors, and helps get new projects off the ground. And I feel like this experience gives me more confidence in talking with faculty in the future about their OER ideas. So firsthand experience, and also with the copy editing, our library is a strong proponent of the library as an open publisher. And I thought it was very important to learn by doing. So in order to really understand the value and the skills, the time involved in copy editing, to go through that process of looking really closely at APA style and thinking, I would add a comma here, but why? What is the rule behind that? And really digging into it. So that helped me to polish my own writing skills. And as a copy editor, I felt like I had touched just a little tiny piece of this project, but Kim shared that I had helped the copy edit process go more smoothly with additional chapters by including the references to those specific APA sections as I was going along and making the edit suggestions. So it's a small example of how sharing through an open collaborative process can be helpful in ways that you may not even realize.
Luann, and yeah, just as one of those co-editors who went through all the chapters with those copy edits, yeah, Luann's clarity and comprehensive linking to the different rules was tremendous. I can't say enough about that. All right, so we are on to our last quadrant, and as we had guessed, we're kind of zipping through, which means lots of room for conversation. But finally, this leads us into what has happened since the release of Open Pedagogy Approaches. What has happened to each of us in terms of our work with open, or what could happen next based on next steps. So to illuminate this a little bit, each of the 6 of us will speak briefly to 1 or 2 of the elements that you see in the corners here with regard to our personal experience having been involved with the book. So I think, Carrie, you are first.
Yes, thank you. So my experiences definitely reflect the project improvement via reflection and calls back to the the sort of meta-ness of this project that Kim has been talking about all along. After submitting the chapter proposal, my co-author and I had two additional iterations of the class. And through the writing process, in doing the research for it, in building our lit review, we found other educators who were using similar practices. And that in turn prompted us to re-examine the assignments we had, think about how the students were working together, the tools that we used, the role that Google Drive and Google Docs played in the work that we were doing, and just generally reflect on our pedagogical practices overall. It also prompted us, so that we would have more to talk about in our chapter and to have more examples, to request in-depth feedback from the students. And having that in-depth feedback then shaped future class iterations, encouraging us to make changes or really promote parts of the project that had worked well for various students. The publication process, speaking of timelines, also prompted us to keep to a timeline that was much stricter in editing and posting the work that the students had done. If we had not had the timeline of needing to make sure that the work was publicly visible before the chapter came out, we would not have had quite the same impetus to finish editing and proofing and finalizing the work that the students had done. So that was also just nice in helping us keep on top of the work itself. And then also personally and professionally, it was really helpful to me. So being an author and participating in specifically an open access publishing process really helped, I think, my credibility as a scholarly communications librarian. Having a publication under my belt gives me more authority when working with faculty and really allows me to make the argument for open publishing that is much harder to make in the sort of theoretical. Because I now have firsthand experience. And then it also professionally encouraged me to engage more with the OER movement sort of more broadly. As one example, I am now an OER specialist with the Affordable Learning Pennsylvania group. And so working with that group to encourage OER adoption around Pennsylvania.
I'll go ahead and go next. So echoing Carrie, writing this chapter was such a key reflection point for my co-author and I. I remember we had missed our institution's writing retreat, so we had decided to just meet in the library and write all day. And she was in her office and I was on one of the benches and I was writing something and I just had this light bulb moment and I ran over to her and then we ended up talking for like an hour about things that we could change in the project. And it was all because I was writing something for this article. And so it was just really helpful because this was right in the middle of where my project sits now. I'm in my 5th semester working on this project, and we were writing this right in the middle of the 3rd semester or the 2nd semester on this project. So it's been really helpful. And obviously like finding resources that we were trying to figure out ways to support our arguments, some of our arguments and stuff within the article, and we were reading them. We're like, oh, we're not doing that. We need to do that. So this is what we're going to change in the next one, in the next iteration. So it was really helpful in that aspect. And a lot of those changes were in regards to student privacy and student agency in particular. But the biggest impact to me has been the professional networking this project has opened up for me. I've met other authors from this project while at conferences. Actually, it was last fall at OE Global. I was standing with my co-author who was presenting a poster, and across the way was a poster. And they were like, oh, we're publishing this in open pedagogy approaches. And I was like, oh, so are we. So it was just really one way to connect that way. And obviously, I've made connections here in this presentation. I hadn't actually met any of them until we decided to do this. And I was even invited to speak with the other editor, Alexis Clifton, and the first invited talk of my career. So as an adjunct, this has been kind of one of those doors that's opened to let me into this field that I didn't have open before participating in this project. And it's been really wonderful.
Oh, thank you. I think I'm going next. As you know, I was on the editorial board of the book, but I also had a proposal since at the time I was working with a faculty member in biology, one of my subjects. I'm scholarly communications, but also STEM, and my subjects are biology, biomedical engineering, and brain and cognitive sciences. Well, this faculty member in biology has decided to adopt an OER textbook and engage in some open pedagogy practices, such as using renewable assignments. Funny story, the proposal did not pass, mainly because it was too early in the process and we did not have enough information yet to actually write the chapter of the book. But in the end, all the buzz around the book happening at our university ended up helping us to share and advertise our own collaboration at several library organized events at the university. In a sense, we hijacked the open pedagogy approaches and we ended up sharing our own story. And truly, our collaboration ended up inspiring other professors to consider embracing open practices. For one of them, for example, we have not been able to find a good OER substitute. And if she decides to create one, what I'm trying to encourage, I hope I can use my newly acquired book editorial experience to make her work a lot easier. So although I'm not an author, I was just an editorial in the editorial board. Of course, having that responsibility now in my CV, it would help with other faculty members that might decide to create their own OER, because I can show an example of a book and tell them, you know, I participated in the process. I can talk to you about what it entails from a point of view of a participant. So it was a win-win for all of us.
I'm next. So for me, I definitely say again, it was so helpful and a big learning experience to just know what the flow and some of the different pieces of the book that just come together, and in the publishing process, and of course again with conversations with Mariana and Kim, learning about some of the other pieces as well. So this was very beneficial personally, but also professionally for my role as a STEM librarian. One of the reasons is because I teach and advise graduate students about the publishing process, as well as some of the aspects and the value of the peer review process. So I think adding my experiences and my voice to the content makes it much more genuine and tangible for the students. So I think echoing some of the sentiments made earlier, I think this also adds a lot to my confidence and credibility. And it has also opened up a lot of networking opportunities, so just with the group here, but also talking about the process and the chapter and the peer review at different events at the university campus, and of course events like the OpenEd conference here, so which is really great.
I can echo some of what's already been said in that just in participating in a small piece of it, I feel like I have a much better understanding of how this whole process works. So definitely understand the internal processes much better of how to successfully launch and manage a collaborative project through this example. It's a great example of using network tools such as the Rebus community to find collaborators, of using community resources to develop and share an open rubric, open process, open review process, I should say, of using project management software such as Airtable to keep track of timelines, and using collaborative platforms like Google Docs and spreadsheets to share chapters and comments amongst people in the different roles. So all in all, I'm happy to have gained a greater understanding that I can put to use in the future in supporting faculty with their own OER ideas. And it never occurred to me that participating in a behind the scenes kind of way, like copy editing, would lead to additional networking and presentation opportunity. So thank you to my co-presenters.
And then for my part, and this kind of goes in tandem with what Moriana was talking about, but before the book's release, our campus wasn't talking much about open initiatives. Moriana's been great and working with faculty to try and get conversations started about open access policies. But for her collaboration with the biology professor, there wasn't too much being discussed about open educational resources or open pedagogy. I was fortunate enough to concurrently be participating in Spark's Open Education Leadership Program, which pushed me to develop a capstone project that would leverage the process where we were with this book with creating some of those workshops that Moriana and Sarah had mentioned that brought awareness of these issues to campus. So again, fortunately with timing, some of our pre-COVID workshops and then the July release of the book, with those two things, our librarians were ready to promote workshops where we could sit side by side professors and brainstorm digital, sometimes open assignments that they wanted to develop for the fall. Because many of us had the authentic experience working with this book, which is an openly published project, we feel prepared to help with related projects. We can promote the use of open practices as professors and students work to create new knowledge, as we ourselves, we're really thinking carefully about those open practices and we're really deliberate about kind of seeing them through the entire process of the book. So that said, we appreciate your attention today, as just 6 of about 140 contributors have been able to share their experiences. That's 144 contributors plus Rebus, which is a whole community of itself. While it may sound cliche, there is a lot of truth to be told in the statement that it takes a village. I think we all feel that. And just as an example, I wrote down all the numbers, but in terms of participants, we had 9 members on our editorial board, 58 authors in total, 44 peer reviewers, 17 copy editors plus our 8 student copy editors. We had 6 reviewers of our work in progress, including the famous Rajiv. He was looking through our introduction as we were writing it. Tremendous support from Robin DeRosa, who actually inspired the entire project by a visit that our lovely Moriana brought to campus. And she wrote a fantastic foreword for us. She connected me with people within the field as I was kind of developing the idea before we started to get to work. And then I know Apurva and Zoe from Rebus, Apurva's on the call, but they have been incredibly supportive through this whole thing. Not the lightest to be, even to allow us to use their platform to start this work. So thank you all. And thank you to Jason Leem for his unsplash background of the beautiful trees and greenery that you see here. So the last slide are our contacts, plus links to the different chapters where you see the asterisks of the authors that are here on the call. And then a call to register. There's going to be an author series from some of the chapters happening between November and January, if you're interested in digging in more to the different chapters. So with that, I will stop sharing. I know there's been some chats and some requests for certain things. We'll get that going, but if you have any questions, let's open it up for discussion. While you do that, I'm just going to grab a piece of the book that somebody was asking about.
So somebody asked, can you please share some of the open pedagogy approaches that left an impression on you? This was not directed to anyone in particular, but I think that we probably all have some examples. I think the book is definitely worth a read, I would say, and just taking a full look at the chapters, even just skimming them, there's a lot of different approaches. But I would say that just hearing the range of ways that people engage students, and particularly the ways that people got students to engage in assignments, made them reusable, and really turned the learning process in a way that centered student involvement and student engagement, was really made an impact on me. Anyone else?
I can share that some of the approaches to teaching copyright and author rights to students was really great. And it was very good to have some of those examples in the chapters, so I could actually follow. As I said, I was working on the process while going through the editorial and the peer review process. And I remember that one of the strategies, I said, oh my God, I want to use this. So I actually contacted the author and said, can I, I'm gonna totally steal this. And if we publish, I will cite you. And so it's one of the perks of working behind the scenes, and everybody said, is that you have that early access before everybody else to information that is extremely useful. And you have even a chance to learn and get some of those ideas. And how to teach copyright to undergrads is challenging. It's a complicated thing. And it's great if you can use examples from people that have been successful and use their same process. So check some of our chapters for that type of information.
And I just want to jump onto that. We were one of the chapters that did include a lesson plan for how we teach copyright in our sessions. And that's kind of the beauty of this book being open and not a traditional published document. It was just, Sarah mentioned putting a video in the chapter with student perspectives, but we were able to embed links to our lesson plans, to our slide decks and everything. And it just makes it so much easier that if somebody is looking for something, they absolutely have access to it.
Just a tiny piece that I'll put out. I talked about my fear of copy editing and would anyone do it? When we released the book, a couple of typos or a couple of errors were found immediately. And because it was digital, we cleaned those up right away. So the whole crowdsourcing aspect to this project is yet another benefit.
Someone mentions the vulnerability that comes with open, and that's completely true. Sometimes it's a bit of a scary process. Making everything in the open, it requires that willingness to be wrong in a sense, and to have people come and suggest new things and correct them, etc. from the beginning. So. Yes, thank you for that comment. It's true.
Yeah, that again, because we're speaking about first time things, that to me was also a really big part of the process. My co-author, Dr. Jennifer Swan, has published a lot, and I had not published anything. So it was very intimidating for me to suggest to her this project and to be writing with her as somebody who has very minimal publishing experience. So that process of, working with an experienced scientist, an experienced researcher on the sort of publication itself, as well as, talking about the pedagogy, also the vulnerability also came in working with the students as well, and really seeing their insights, hearing their feedback about what made this class different from their other classes. This was a behavioral neuroanatomy class, and one of the students said that they learned more in this class through the process of writing this open textbook chapter than they had in any class that they'd taken before at Lehigh. And that was really sort of surprising to us, but also really, really meaningful, and getting that really vocal feedback from students, and also feeling the vulnerability ourselves, or myself, I can speak for myself, in the writing process and the education process and the teaching and the learning. Really, I feel like I'm still learning and still building on it. And the community aspect of this publication process has also really reinforced that as well.
And I would say, oh my gosh, there's so much I could say about vulnerability with this project. I don't even know if I'm brave enough to say it, but my first request for somebody who might want to take on this book with me was Robin DeRosa, of all people. And so while that might have been a crazy ask, she connected me to a bunch of people, but it also got me thinking about, so I'm not expert or experienced in open publishing, but I know somebody who is, and that was Alexis Clifton. But even she will say she's assisted with projects like this, but she's never been involved with it. So I think, just having the power of the team and putting those structures into place, I think that allowed all of us to trust in the process. And then just having this amazing community behind us has been just incredibly rewarding.
I have one comment about the process that is not exactly about vulnerability, but it's about being really completely open. As you see, some of us were in several aspects involved in several aspects of the project, while we were editors, we were also authors or reviewers, etc. So that make, for example, thinking about conflicts of interest. We had to think and reflect and come up with the strategies to avoid conflicts of interest, for example. So when we review, not reviewing things from people that we have close connections, etc. So even those aspects that you might have not think about, we had to engage to make sure that everything was transparent and right and correct.
Yeah, I would also agree with that. Like the transparency and the openness of the whole process was really helpful. So I'd say, I know there was some vulnerability, but I think there was also this thing about constantly improving and like being able to do that. I think that's really great. I believe like some chapters, even as COVID hit, added an extra introduction or a preface to the chapters just to talk about the changes that are happening right now. So I think those are some of the things that are really easy, but really great that can be done in this platform.
And I will add, so we are getting close to time. So please, if you have more questions, ask. But the great thing, again, this was one of Alexis's additions, but the fact that the book is online, we encourage people who read the chapters, who are inspired by the chapters, to then respond to the chapter through the Open Pedagogy Approaches platform. So that we can find out like how has this triggered, how has this continued, because I think it's all about a growing snowball for me, and that ripple effect, I guess. Yeah, this is stuff I really get excited about. So we would love to hear your contributions, and we would love to see you at the author series of workshops as well. And I guess one last thing I will mention is that it was really a fluke in some cases to find out how first timer each of us were. We identified that after the release of the book, and then there were some tweets and there were some Facebook posts saying, oh my gosh, it's my first scholarly publication. And that's what really inspired this presentation, was to know, because everything was so high quality from our perspective. So to know that these were first timers in different avenues, that was inspiring to us as well. So thank you all to my panelists. It's been wonderful working with you throughout the entire project.
Thank you to all the authors and contributors. It was wonderful.
Indeed, thanks.
So I do believe we can give you 3 minutes back of your time, and we weren't as short as we thought we were going to be. So thank you all for coming and listening to our experiences.
Thank you.
Thank you.